Gold has recently hit a new high. Depending on who you're asking, sometimes that has a lot to do with exchange rates or inflation rates, that kind of thing. But it's undeniable that gold has kind of kept on this trajectory, going up to what is, at least for right now, a new high. And when you are someone like me who's been stacking and collecting precious metals for a long period of time, that can be exciting. It's fun to see new people coming into this field that I have cared so much about for such a long period of time. But I've almost been kind of picking up some irrational exuberance. Some people seem to be overly confident in the way that the market is moving right now. And at the risk of sounding like that old guy shaking his fist and saying, "Get off my lawn," I have some concerns. I have some concerns about the way that people might be seeing this, especially if you are new to precious metals. So that's what I want this video to be about. I'm going to give you a couple of different conflicting perspectives. And really, honestly, they're not that conflicting. And I just want you to think about them. This is almost kind of Zen and the art of stacking precious metals. So we're going to take almost a little bit of a philosophical bent here. But I do think you're going to enjoy it. If nothing else, there's some really cool pieces of gold to look at, right? If you are new to the channel, my name is Dub C. I want to thank you for being with me here today. If you're one of my returning subscribers, you guys know I wouldn't be doing this without you, and I really appreciate you being with me here today. If you are new and you haven't yet subscribed, maybe you've seen a couple of my videos, go ahead and click on that subscription button. It doesn't cost anything. It's just a way to show support for the channel. And if you're new to the channel, I like to begin my videos with a simple disclaimer. I'm going to go into that in pretty good detail here. You folks who have been here before know that I start the videos with, I am not a financial advisor. I'm not trying to offer you any kind of financial advice. I'm simply trying to share some of my experience having bought and sold precious metals and rare coins for the last 30 or 40 years, but I'm going to stop right there. I usually just move right into the next step of my videos, but I really want to focus on that disclaimer. I'm talking about some philosophies, some theories, some perspectives about precious metals that really apply primarily to me. So I'm going to share things from kind of my perspective in this video, and I want you to understand that I don't know your situation, so I can't be offering you any kind of specific advice that would be appropriate necessarily for your situation. There are lots of YouTubers out there who I think of as almost clickbait people. They put out videos just looking for affirmation or to build their subscriber base or to get their watch count up higher. And they scream and holler about, you gotta sell silver tomorrow or you must buy gold this afternoon. And I've always kind of scratched my head at that, because how do they know what your situation is, right? And it's never been who I am. It's not how I make videos or why I make videos. So I just want you to keep that in mind. I don't usually talk about the disclaimer. I don't usually talk about it very much because it's probably not that relevant. But in this case, I want you to understand the thing that I say often on my channel is that a journey into precious metals is a very personal journey. And it's something that you have to decide for yourself and you have to be comfortable with. So rather than telling you what to do, which is not really my place, I'd rather arm you with some information that I have picked up over the last several decades so that you can make an informed decision about your own situation. I'll get off my soapbox now. I just wanted to get into that a little bit deeper. And then the next step for my videos is usually I introduce a couple of terms that we can talk about when we're talking about the subject matter of the video. In this case, again, it's almost a philosophical perspective, two different perspectives on precious metals, especially in lieu of this or because of this new high in gold pricing. A couple of definitions. The first one is really a phrase, and that one is past is prologue. Without sounding too stuffy, that's a Shakespearean quote from The Tempest, and I am not a Shakespearean scholar by any stretch of the imagination, but I've always liked that quote because what it really means is that everything that's happened in the past kind of leads us up to this point. And there's another famous quote that kind of goes hand in hand to it, and you might be familiar with this one too. It's by George Santayana, I believe, is a Spanish-American philosopher, and it's along the lines of, those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. You probably heard that one before. And I think that's really appropriate given the price of gold right now. So Past is prologue. You'll probably hear me say that a couple times in the course of this video. It just means kind of look back at what we've seen. And especially because human beings have had a relationship with gold that probably outlasts every relationship that we've ever had, right? We have been consumed by and obsessed with gold for 50 or 100,000 years. So we have a very rich history, no pun intended, that we can kind of reflect on as we look at where gold prices are now. Past is prologue. And the other thing, term that I wanted to use actually kind of goes hand in hand with what I said earlier about these having some of my own personal thoughts and beliefs in them, and that is that I am a contrarian by nature. Contrarian is a person who opposes popular opinion, especially when it comes to investing. I've been a contrarian my entire life about just about everything in my life, and honestly, it's gotten me into a lot of trouble in my life, but it's also kind of let me forge my own path, right? I'm pretty proud of where I am and where I came from. So I am a bit of a contrarian. So just because I have certain beliefs doesn't necessarily mean that you should. There is safety and comfort in going with where the markets are going. But I have found in my own personal life that being a contrarian has allowed me to pick up gains and pick up interesting things in my collections, whether it's precious metals or rare coins or art or whatever else it is that I collect, when other people have kind of forgotten about it or maybe ignoring it. And I think that when you're buying something low, when that price is depressed, it makes a lot of sense, right? Especially if you've done your homework and you realize that these things do have intrinsic value or a value of another kind that's just maybe being overlooked by other people. So contrarian, that's who I am by nature. Maybe you're a contrarian too, and maybe that's why you're watching my channel. Two perspectives. We're going to talk about two different perspectives. So I'm going to give you the first one, then we're going to shift gears and essentially do a 180 and look at the other one. But I want you to think about these perspectives as we're talking about it and see if you think, like I do, that they do kind of go hand in hand with each other on certain level. And I don't think that they are exclusive of one another. Let's start with the first one. Gold is at an all-time high. Does that mean you should be buying it now? I like to use a couple of different websites when I'm looking at historic precious metals prices. The funny thing is that they often don't agree. Sometimes one will say there was a different price on a different date or a different closing price, a different low. So I'm going to use a couple of them here as we talk about these for illustration. According to goldprice.org, gold hit an all-time high of $694 in February of 1980. What happened in 1980? You guys who watch my channel know that just about every video I throw out the Hunt brothers. They were a couple guys, investors in Texas, who realized that with the price of silver so low, they could capture the silver market. They could control the silver market and strangle it. And there's some evidence to suggest that they did just that. But then the Fed kind of pulled the rug out from under them and made the rule changes that eventually led to that having big problems for them. But there's a quote, an expression that people use, that a rising tide raises all boats. And I think that was the case here in February of 1980. The price of silver had gone up and gold went up correspondingly. So it went up to $694. And you're looking at a picture of it here. The numbers off to the left don't really represent what we're talking about, but you can definitely see there was kind of an upward trajectory and then it just kind of took off. So is that the point with that price at that high when you would have gotten into the gold market? It's an interesting question. Again, it's really a reflection. How do you feel about it? There's some people who get that FOMO, that fear of missing out, and I am really guilty of getting that. I get that all the time. So would you see this and think, well, here's an opportunity. If I don't jump on board, I'm going to miss this. Or do you take a more cautious approach and look at that and say, wow, the price has gone up so high. Why would I get in at this level? Competing perspectives on this opinion, and I'd like to know your thoughts about it. What would you do? Interesting to note, so after we see this spike that happened in February of 1980, we're going to show that the price actually fell down to about $300 an ounce in June of 1982, so within a year and a half, 2 years of this spike. And the interesting thing to note is that while the price bounced around a little bit, somewhere in that $300 range, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less, it stayed there until about 2004. So nearly 20 years, actually could be more than 20 years, that price stayed in that $300 range. How does that make you feel if you were somebody who bought at that spike and then decided to hold it thinking that gold was continuing to go up? And then a couple, 3 years later, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years later, 8 years later, gold has done nothing. What would that make you feel about your investment? It's an interesting question. Again, I'd like to know your thoughts about that. This all sounds like it is ancient history, especially if you're a Gen Z or a millennial and you're watching this video. My older video viewers will be shaking their heads and go, yeah, I remember that. I was there. The reason I bring up the Hunt Brothers is because it's really one of the first events that happened in precious metals that I can recall. But it gives you an idea of how long I've been doing this. So that was maybe ancient history, right? But think about this. According to macrotrends.com, in August or September of 2011, gold hit another all-time high, this time according to them, 2533. You're looking at that here in this chart. So then you're seeing that kind of upward movement again, and then a high of 2533, and then it fell to a low of about $1,400 and stayed there for 3 or 4 years. So you're seeing that reflected here. It's maybe not quite as dramatic as that first case, but you can definitely see there have been at least a couple of instances in the past, recent living memory at least. I know I'm showing my age, but you can see the price goes up, then it drops, and it stays in that lower range for an extended period of time. There are infomercials about investing in all sorts of different fun investments, and they almost always have the expression, past performance is no indication of future results. I think that's really key to remember here. Even though I said that past is prologue, right? It's good to remember that nobody has a crystal ball. Nobody knows what's going to happen, but you're seeing here two instances in kind of recent memory where gold has gone up considerably, dropped, and then stayed in a lower range for an extended period of time. In fact, that second drop had a lot to do with when I was buying gold heavily. I was buying silver heavily a little bit earlier. My finances, probably like a lot of you out there, made me concentrate on silver first before I made that shift to gold. I was picking up gold in that early period of time too, but silver was down really low, and that's really when I got back into precious metals after having been a teenager who had discovered girls and video games and stuff. So, macro trends, we're looking at that. If that seems too far in the past, right? We're talking about 2011, 2012, 2013. Consider that with gold at that all-time high right now, like right while I'm filming this video, somewhere in that $2,500 range. In 2020, the yearly low of gold was $1,242.50. That is less than half of today's high price. That's 2020, right? That's not ancient history. That's stuff that happened just a couple weeks ago, if you're my age. It seems like it, at least. But everybody should be able to relate to 2020, even if you're one of my youngest subscribers, one of my youngest viewers, right? That wasn't ancient history. Gold was half the price as it is now. So is that an indication that now is the time to be buying? I'm asking your opinion. What do you think about that? It's something to think about. But if you think that that is an anomaly, right? If that's the kind of thing that, well, maybe that just happened, for that was the one low in 2020 that Dub C picked out, yeah, a lot of people do lie with statistics, especially when you're looking at diagrams and illustrations and graphs that are showing a particular investment. People have this funny way of picking out the absolute low and the absolute high and trying to make a case of it. So consider this. The low in 2019, right, 1 year earlier, $1,222.80. The low in 2018, $1,160. The low in 2017, $1,130. In fact, you can go back to about 2014, and I'll show you what I'm talking about here, where the lows for each of these last, 5, 6, 7 years in a row was somewhere in that $1,100 or $1,200 an ounce range. People use the expression, I'd back the truck up if gold ever hit that price. The funny thing is that you never saw people backing the truck up when they had the opportunity back in 2015, 2016, 2017. And maybe that's one of the things that separates people who are doers and talkers. I didn't have huge resources for a lot of those years, but whenever I could, and I saw something that was kind of low, I was buying, whether it was silver, gold, or rare coins, or anything else. Remember that contrarian view that I talked about. So interesting. Even though gold is at an all-time high now, it wasn't that long ago that gold was about half that price. And you can go back several years and see that there was always gold at about half that price, going back nearly 10 years. Interesting to think about. Does knowing that the price of gold closed at less than 12.50 an ounce every year between maybe 2013 and 2020 make you want to buy gold at $2,500? Are you feeling that FOMO? I'm not trying to tell you what to do. I'm just asking, where does that make you feel in relationship to the price of gold today? The zen of precious metals buying, right? So that is one perspective that I wanted you to consider. And of course, we haven't talked about these beautiful gold coins here. So that's what the second perspective is. If you are fixating on the first perspective, think about it in terms and relationship with this second perspective, this philosophical perspective that I'm going to give you. The second one, let's dive into it. What you see here on the left, and I'm going to go from left to right because that's chronological. What we see here on the left is this really cool, eye-catching $10 bill. This is a Federal Reserve note. So just as an aside, I like to harp a lot on Executive Order 6102, right? That was the Roosevelt era decree, presidential proclamation that banned gold ownership in certain situations. So I like to think of us having gold certificates that were circulating exclusively at that period of time. But this is the series 1915, and you can see it says Federal Reserve Note. Federal Reserve Note. You can see this is series 1914, maybe 1914. Hopefully you can see that there. And if you flip it over, beautiful bill, right? These are fantastic bills, but it also says in great big letters there, Federal Reserve Note. There is no denying that's what this is. So this is a really cool $10 bill from 1910. Series 1914, it is the Friedberg number. Freiberg is the cataloger of American currency, somebody who kind of sat down and cataloged every single piece of currency that we've had. That is Friedberg number FR919A, I believe, if you're a currency collector. I have some interesting bills, but I wouldn't really call myself a currency collector. I would grade this piece probably fine or maybe choice fine. Bills are graded on a scale that's very similar to the 1 to 70 scale, the Sheldon grading scale that we grade coins on. So I would say this is numerically somewhere around 12 or 15. I tend to be kind of conservative. You bill collectors out there can jump in and see if I'm completely wrong or tell me if I'm about right. Current value of this piece. So if you were to try to find one of these on eBay right now, and I believe this is an Ohio, it's a 4D Blue Seal, this is kind of a standard piece of currency. Interesting, this is nicknamed. Our currency used to be much bigger than it is now. Is that a sign of inflation? So we actually have a term for these. They're called horse blankets because they are so large. I'll compare one with an American modern currency in just a bit. So the value of this piece, roughly, give or take, if you're looking at eBay, I would say this is maybe on a bad day, $80, maybe on a good day, $100, $110, somewhere in that region. It's a neat piece of American history, and I believe that these are still completely legal tender, right? I don't think these have ever been recalled. You would get kind of strange looks if you tried to spend one. But interesting about this piece is that this is a 1908 $10 gold piece, right? So these are both $10 units. This piece, I've talked about these before. This is designed by Augustus St. Gaudens. Maybe not quite as popular as this $20 gold piece, but I still think this is a fantastic, gorgeous coin. This $10 gold piece from 1908. So these are just a couple years apart, and they definitely would have circulated at the same period of time. If you were owed money or owed somebody money, if you went shopping, we're going to spend $10, you would just as likely be spending a $10 bill as a $10 gold coin. They were interchangeable, right? That's incredibly important to remember. This 1908 dated $10 gold piece, 90% pure gold, like all of our circulating pre-33 gold pieces, right? This is the actual gold weight of this piece, 0.484 troy ounces of pure gold. So its intrinsic value, its gold value as I am filming today, $1,213.85. So you've got a $10 bill that would have circulated in this same period of time that's worth maybe on a good day $100. You have a $10 gold coin that would have circulated right alongside it, wouldn't have raised any eyebrows. People would have thought of them as being completely interchangeable, with a value of $1,213.85. And American currency has never been devalued, right? Think about that, because we're going to be talking about some pieces a little bit later that have been devalued. Our currency is still our currency. So a $10 bill is still a $10 bill, right? What does it mean in terms of its value, of its relationship with modern currency? About $100 versus $1,213. Moving on to the next one, and I've talked about this one a couple of times, primarily in the video I did about kind of the history of coins and coin collecting. I think it's a fascinating field. I'll put a link down below if you want to take a look at it. This is a series 1949, probably issued in 1950, Peruvian note. It is a 100, and we'll show it here with my little pointer, CN, that is 100 soles de oro, oro the Spanish word for gold. So this is 100 gold soles or soles. The sol is the unit of currency that was exchanged in Peru, kind of like our dollar, okay? So I want you to note here in particular, and we can actually see the date here, 1949, but again, I think this was made 1950. You see this beautiful rendition of Liberty with the shield and the column with the wreath on it, and we're gonna flip it over. This is a really cool color. I think it has something to do with the fact that this is supposed to be 100 gold soles, right? It's almost kind of a golden orange color. And you see this great big shield with all these devices on it, kind of the symbol of the state of Peru. And then we're going to take a look at this piece, very similar to the $10 gold coin. This is a Peruvian 100 gold sol coin, and this is dated 1950. So again, these would have been concurrent. This would have been in the exact same year, the exact same period of time. And remember I said there's Liberty with her shield and the column and the wreath. It's easy to see that this was supposed to be representative. You've got a really easy to see similarity. It's almost the same size even, right? That is supposed to be the same thing. It is supposed to be exactly the same so that people would treat them the same. Flipping it over, we talked about this device that's kind of the symbol of the state of Peru. Look at that. On the back of it, identical down to the size, right? Everything about it is the same. 100 gold sol note, 100 gold sol coin. Identical, same year, same country, same everything. This is, incidentally, for you currency collectors, Series 1949. I believe this is pick number 73, pick the cataloging system used for kind of world banknotes. So number 73, I'd grade this a little bit higher than the $10 bill. I'd say that this is probably a VF35. Again, you can correct me on that if I'm wrong, you currency guys out there. You can find these bills on eBay. They're not especially rare. I looked right before I started filming. There's an example out there for about 30 bucks. So somewhere in that range. Compare that to the 1950 gold sol coin, just like we did with the American pieces. This is one of my favorite coins because it is arguably the largest gold circulating coin that was ever made. Did it ever circulate? I don't know. It's a good question, but clearly they were representing each other, right? There is no doubt about that. This is KM number 231 for you catalog people. It is 90% gold, just like the $10 gold piece. 1.354 troy ounces. So this is approaching 1.5 troy ounces of pure gold. You can see how thick it is there. This is just a killer heavy coin. You can definitely feel it in the slab. This has got some heft to it. Current intrinsic value of this, as I'm filming here today, $3,410. So this isn't distant history, right? This is 1950. I wasn't alive, but my parents were. My grandparents definitely were. 100 sol note from the same period of time, same country, identical representative currency, $35. The coin that was circulating along with it, $3,410.13. You starting to get what I'm going with this? I think you are, but I think it's going to get a little bit more interesting. We're going to have some fun with this. If you saw my video about my win in Las Vegas, last summer, I won a small jackpot, and I'm not really much of a gambler when it comes to gambling. My gambling is really buying gold and silver, right? But I took the winnings that I got, and I bought this gold coin. This is a beautiful, stunning gold coin from 1955. This is Venezuelan piece. So this is a series of gold coins that were struck in Venezuela to honor the indigenous chiefs that fought against the Spaniards and the English even in the area that we now think of as Venezuela. So this is a Venezuelan gold coin, and it's got all the different weights and measures down here below showing you exactly what it's made out of. This one, 1955, like this entire series, there are about 18 coins in this series. And you can see here it says 60 bolivares. That's what the B stands for. Bolivari is the Venezuelan unit of currency. You see where I'm going with that. So did these actually circulate? I don't think so. I think these were maybe made as more of a pattern, but there was a reason way back in 1955 that they put that 60 Bolivari value on it, because there were fractional pieces that I believe were 20 Bolivari and 5 Bolivari, smaller versions of these, right? These were the biggest ones. And what I have here is another from the series. I do collect them. You got to collect them all, right? So I do collect this series, and this is a piece that I bought, one of the earlier pieces that I bought. And this is the same deal, 1955 Venezuela, 60 Bolivares. This is a chief named Guaycamporo. And the interesting thing about this piece is that this is the same chief that we see on this bill. That's why we're going to compare and contrast these two. This piece, let me see if I got this right. It's XMB number. That means this is probably never a monetized issue, but while it might not have been monetized, there's very little difference between 1950 and 1955, right? Middle of the 20th century. So that Peruvian piece was very similar in a lot of ways to this Venezuelan piece. And if I remember correctly, if my calculations are right, the border between Peru and Venezuela at their closest is only about 200 miles apart from each other. So this is a very similar point in the world. It's the exact same 90% gold purity. It's the exact same period of time, 1950s. So you can see that there are a lot of similarities between this piece and the Peruvian piece. XMB, number 68 or 69, I think the series is XMB number 67 through 84, so I don't remember off the top of my head which one this is. It is kind of a circulating gold coin, 90% pure. The actual gold weight on this piece, 0.6424 of a troy ounce, and it actually, like I said, it kind of says the weights down here at the bottom. You can see that. So 0.6424 of a troy ounce. It's a little bit more than a half of a troy ounce, maybe not quite 2/3 of a troy ounce. I guess that would be 0.666 of a troy ounce. So this is about 1/3 of a troy ounce. Its intrinsic value today, as I'm typing, $1,612.84. Keep that in mind. This is a much later piece of currency, but like I said, because it's got Guaycampuro on it, the exact same visage, his same face, tilted in another direction. You can see his name down here, right? So this is a piece that came out in 2016. And this will be an interesting thing for you folks who are interested in hyperinflation and inflation. And this is an ugly truth about paper currency, right? A little bit of a sad story with maybe a little bit of a happy ending. Let's see about that. So issued in 2016, this is a 2,000 Bolivari note. Each of these was made on a heavy ragstock paper. And I think that's important to draw the parallels, right? This is not some cheap piece of junk that was made on a color copier. This is a really nice piece of heavy ragstock paper. This is intaglio or intaglio printed. You can feel, and that's a more expensive way of printing something. You have to have those printing masters, and you have to have a really heavy-duty printing press and all that kind of stuff to make these. You can feel that some of these elements are raised and some of them are kind of sunk beneath the paper. It's a beautiful design. You can see it's micro-printed. There are all sorts of numbers and letters that are thrown into this mix that you can only make out if you really bring them in close, and I think that's really cool. What else do we have? We've got a watermark here. You guys who are not used to currency may not realize that a lot of currency has a watermark when you shine a light through it. That's Simon Bolivar, the namesake of the Bolivari, right? You can see his face there, but you can only see it when you're shining a light through it, and you can see it on the back as well. Same deal. There he is. So it's got a watermark, which is kind of a legit thing to do with currency. It's intaglio printed. You can see this thread that goes through it. This metallic thread that's holographic also, you don't see it on the other side, right? This is not a cheap thing to do. This is embedded within the note, and it's a little bit difficult to see, but you see these bars, these little bars that go across here and here. They have micro printing in them as well. All the signatures, all the anti-counterfeit devices, the nice quality paper with the embedded threads, what does it remind you of? It might remind you of American currency, right? Especially the $100 bill. I think it's the only currency that we have that's got that thread embedded in it. Does it go on the other side also? No, it's the same technology, right? Same idea. It's got micro printing on it too. We've got color shifting ink here. We've got really tiny printing all the way around. This is intaglio printed or intaglio printed. You can definitely feel there's a texture there to it. It's even got the same watermark. Let me see. Well, not the same, right? This one has got Ben Franklin on it rather than Simon Bolivar. And you can't see it on the back, right? It's the same thing. So why am I going overboard talking about this piece compared to the Venezuelan piece? I think it's really important to understand that this is not a piece of junk. This was what people were putting their faith in Venezuela. This is a legitimate form of currency. This is every bit as good, if not better, than every other currency that's been made in the last 10, 15 years anyway, right? This is Series 2016, issued probably 2017. So this is not distant memory. This is right now. And Venezuela is not some country on the other side of the world. They're about 2,000 miles away from America, but within, South America. So this is something that's kind of in our own hemisphere, if you will. All of those devices, all of the anti-counterfeiting, the microprinting, the holographic thread, all of that kind of stuff, the watermark and everything else, is designed to instill faith in your currency, because as a Federal Reserve note that we have in the United States of America, there's nothing else backing up our currency but our faith in it. So the people that make this currency go overboard in really trying to instill that faith. We're supposed to trust this. It's not something that can be easily counterfeited. It shouldn't be something that is just disregarded. This is supposed to be legitimate, all right? So this series 2017, the Venezuelan pieces, when they came out, the largest bill from this series, kind of like the difference between a $1 bill and a $100 bill, was 100,000 bolivares, and that would probably raise an eyebrow already, right? You're already thinking if you've got 100,000 of something, then those 100,000 items probably don't have a lot of value, and you're absolutely right. Venezuela has been suffering from economic depression and inflation for quite a while now, probably the better part of a quarter of a century, maybe even more than that. So this was designed to kind of thwart that. This was maybe supposed to be the end of that, and this was one of the reasons why this currency was so well made compared to some of the other currencies in the world. People were supposed to have faith in it. So when they were released, that 100,000 Bolivari note was worth, in terms of American currency, about $2.42. It certainly isn't very much, but you can extrapolate. If 100,000 Bolivares is $2.42, then 10,000 Bolivares, 1/10 of that, would be 24 cents. So 2,000 Bolivari note would be worth about 5 cents. That's a little bit depressing to think about, right? They would have put this much thought, effort, and everything else into making these notes that had an exchange rate of about a nickel. But if that's where you're living and that's what you have to use, the cost of living is probably considerably lower, and you wouldn't have just been spending a few of these. It would have taken a lot to buy something, but that's about how much it was worth. But by 2018, June of 2018, so we're talking about a year and a half after these notes were released, and remember, they're supposed to kind of tame inflation. That's the whole purpose of them. That 100,000 Bolivari note had fallen in price in terms of exchange with United States currency, so that it was only worth about 5 cents. And again, if you're extrapolating the 2,000 Bolivari note at that point, that means that this note was worth about 1/10 of 1 cent. How is that for depressing? You can see how quickly these notes got devalued. You're talking about a 60 Bolivari coin from 1955. That wasn't, ancient history, with that value, that intrinsic value of somewhere around $1,600. And this 2,000 Bolivari note is so much bigger than the 60 Bolivari coin, right? Already dropping to that it's worth literally a fraction of a penny. So what does that mean? It means that if you had something like these 2,000 Bolivari notes and you needed to buy something, you are in a situation where you had to spend one of these. What is this? This is a brick of 2,000 Bolivari notes. You can see that this is the exact same bill here. This brick contains 10 straps. My fellow drug dealers out there know that each of these straps contains 100 bills. So this is a brick of 1,000 of these notes. Each one of these on that high quality paper, each one of these with those signatures and any counterfeit devices and watermarks and threads and holograms and everything else. This is sequentially numbered from the very top to the very bottom, all the way down. 1,000 of these bills, 1,000 of these bills at 2,000 Bolivares means that this brick of currency was 2 million Bolivares. By 2018, how much was it worth? About $1. That's how quickly this currency devalued. If you had been lucky enough living in Venezuela to have put some of your savings into these 60 Bolivari coins when they were released in the 1950s, these prices have increased relative to American currency, right? You can say that it didn't increase in price, the value of currency dropped, and there is a valid argument there. That is something that I would entertain. But the point is, this piece in today's money, today's American money, worth $1,213.85. This entire brick of 2 million bolivares was worth $1 within 2 years of it being released. The sad thing about this is that within about a year later, the money had fallen so far that this entire currency that was designed to replace a currency to stop inflation had fallen so far that it was removed from circulation and replaced with a different currency. And the really sad thing about that is that the currency that replaced this currency has already been removed from circulation as well. We're not talking about ancient history. We're not talking about the other side of the world. This is a developed country within our own hemisphere, and we're talking about something that happened in the last 5 or 6 years. It should be an eye-opener, right? So that's a completely different perspective. Does it compete with the perspective that we started this video out, right? Does it compete with this perspective of seeing the price of gold go up and then seeing the price of gold level for such a long period of time, again and again and again, within my lifetime? I think that these perspectives kind of work hand in hand with each other, and I think that you can probably draw some interesting parallels, even though there are some differences in those perspectives. And again, I was trying to provide you with some different thoughts, some different philosophies on this new $2,500 all-time high for the price of gold. How does this perspective make you feel about it? Does it make you want to go out and buy gold? Does it make you want to stop buying gold? I'd like to get your thoughts. So interesting, right? We've got some interesting examples, some beautiful examples here, some really tragic examples. I'm pleased to say that, at least according to the most recent information that I can find, the inflation rate of Venezuela has fallen considerably. So maybe this new currency is actually going to work for them. With the price inflation index falling to about 50%, where it had been in the thousands. Imagine withdrawing money from your checking account in the morning to buy groceries. And by noon, that money being worth half as much as it had in the morning. Imagine trying to buy clothes for your kids as we go back to school, with that same situation happening. Imagine getting paid in the evening and by the next morning have your pay worth a fraction of what it was when you got off work the night before. Imagine trying to live in that. We suffer with about 5% inflation right now. We suffer. I've seen inflation so much higher than that in just my lifetime. But imagine if it was 10 times or 100 times or even more greater than that. It definitely makes you want to consider things like gold, doesn't it? Interesting perspective, interesting thoughts. Let me know your opinion below. Do you favor opinion one? That's that perspective, the first one, a little bit more. Do you favor this perspective? Do you see how they can work hand in hand? I'd love to hear your thoughts on the Zen and the art of precious metal stacking. If you have questions about any of the things that we talked about here today, by all means, leave a question down below. Love to hear your thoughts about it. And I like to say that if you've got a question, there's a good chance that somebody else has that same question, might be a little bit too afraid to ask it. So ask that question. Let's see if we can answer it for everybody. If you have thoughts or opinions about those perspectives, I'd love to hear those too. Let's keep it going. I encourage you to read the comments down below. Let's see what your fellow stackers and collectors think about those perspectives. Am I completely wrong, right? Do they have nothing to do with anything right now? I'd love to hear that thought as well. If you have suggestions on any other videos or video series that you'd like to see me make on anything dealing with precious metals or rare coins, leave that comment down below also. And if I take you up on it and make that video or video series, I'll give you a big shout out. If you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, now's a great opportunity to go ahead and click on that subscription button, click on the like and the notification buttons, all that kind of fun stuff. Again, it doesn't cost anything, but it's a way to build the channel and become part of this community. Love to have you be part of it. And as always, thank you for allowing me to be a part of your journey as we go deeper into the world of coins and physical precious metals.